I ended up in a relationship with a man who was not a believer, and it was definitely a process. I lied to myself a lot in that relationship. It wasn't just, he barely lied to me. It was really just me lying to myself.
Hello, my name is Brenda Mata, and welcome to the Fearless Calling podcast. This is a podcast where we focus on encouraging Christian women of all ages to fearlessly pursue their God-given calling. Today, we have three special guests, Morgan Jones, Anneliese Molina, and my sweet mama, Brenda Mata. I asked these ladies to come on and talk about toxic relationships and the importance of being equally yoked. These ladies are really special to me, and I'm excited for them to share with us today and how, as Christians, we can laugh without fear of the future because of God's grace in our lives. Ladies, welcome to the podcast, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Brenda.
So I'm going to go ahead and go into some questions. I'm really excited to have you all on here. But for the first question, to kind of give our audience some background, since they don't really know us, can you give some background on how all of us have met?
Yeah, so I'll go first. I'm Anneliese, and I met Brenda in a business class, my first year being at HLGU. So at first, it was kind of just it was very casual. Saw her in class, we spoke in class, but then saw her outside of class, and we had lunch a few times together. And so from then on, we kind of I couldn't shake her. So
Couldn't get rid of me.
No. But we did get a chance to know each other more over the next couple of months and eventually years. And so it's been great so far. Very great.
Kind of crazy to think we've been friends for years now.
I know.
It doesn't feel that long.
I know. You're with an S.
So we've upgraded.
Yes.
Well, I'm Morgan, and I actually met Brenda when we were just little kids. We were probably 6,
Yeah,
I guess.
think.
And we had mutual friends from her church. But then my family moved overseas to Zambia, Africa, because my parents were missionaries. And so we kind of forgot all about each other because we weren't very close when we were little. And then we reconnected when we were 13, 14.
I think so.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And then kind of lost contact again. And then we met again when we were both in the same musical at HLG. And then after that, we really hit it off. We were like, oh man, we'd actually like to be friends than just see each other like every 4 years, something like that. And then Anneliese, I met a year ago last month. So just last January, we met because Brenda had a birthday dinner, and we met there. And
I just knew you guys would mesh.
I know.
We did.
We really
a little
hit it
too
off
much.
as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
we can't shake
I
her
know.
either. So
Dang it.
You're stuck for life. Yeah, and so you guys have kind of heard the story about how I have met both of these ladies. Mainly met both of them through the college that I attend and I'm graduating from in May, which is Hannibal-LaGrange University. And it has been a long journey. We've all gotten along so well, I think, because of different things that we've been through. And one of those topics is the thing that we're talking about today. Today's podcast will mainly be questions to Anneliese and Morgan, even though my sweet mama is on here. I'm mainly gearing these questions towards these ladies, and then my mom will come on and share a little bit of her story and her experience on one of these particular questions as we get through and talk. But now that everyone kind of knows who you guys are and how we have all met, I kind of wanted to get to the whole theme or topic of this podcast today, which is toxic relationships and being unequally yoked, because all of us have had different experiences with this, whether it's toxic and unequally yoked or either or. And I think that's one of the reasons, like I said, why we are so close was because we were able to help each other and pour into each other during that time. But can you each give me like a brief overview sorry, of your past relationships? And you do not have to be super like detailed. And then I will just share a little bit of mine as well.
yeah, so I'll go first. So I was in a relationship for a couple of years with a guy who was not Christian. And at first, I've been Christian for I remember being a little girl and asking Jesus to come into my life and save me. So I've grown up in a church. My dad's a pastor, all that sort of stuff. And so, but I ended up in a relationship with a man who was not a believer. And it was definitely a process. I lied to myself a lot in that relationship. It wasn't just, he barely lied to me. It was really just me lying to myself that, no, this is going to be fine. Oh, we're not that serious. Oh, it won't matter. And then a couple years into the relationship, I realized, oh no, this matters actually. And I always knew that I wanted to be with a man who was a believer. I wanted to have a family and, be the kind of parents that my parents were to me, who were two believers. They would pray with us, and I knew that I wouldn't have that if I ended up with the man I was with. And so I eventually was the one that I just had to stand on my 2 feet and tell him, I cannot do this anymore. I cannot be with you. And it wasn't necessarily that I, also just used the reason of him not being a Christian. There were other factors as well, but it was the main and most important factor to me that you just can't work through that. If he wasn't a believer, that's what the most important thing was to me. So yeah, this is a whole thing.
That is a very important thing that you realize the older you get and the deeper you get into a relationship with Christ, the more you realize how important that really is.
Yes, for sure.
Especially because as believers, we know there's an eternity, and we know that there's so much more to life than just living and breathing. We're called to so much more. And when you don't have someone that is kingdom minded and understands that as well, it's really hard to build anything with them.
Absolutely.
Because it is so sacrificial, superficial, however. I don't know what word I'm going for, but it's hard.
It was one of the most difficult things that I've been through, having ended that relationship. Obviously better now, but
praise God.
No, but it was one of those things where, some people would, with an outside view, could say, well, you're just have two different opinions. But that is not true. It's two different foundations, two different beliefs, even, as a Christian, I believe in creation. I believe God created the universe. He doesn't even, he wouldn't believe that. He believed we all evolved. It was so like just the most basic things that I would consider basic, I guess, that we did not agree on. And so even though we laughed and had good times, and we obviously, a lot of the relationship was positive, it was those fundamental things that we just didn't agree on. And because of that, I just knew that I could not continue a relationship with somebody who, even at like my core beliefs, he didn't support, and not support, couldn't even fathom, didn't understand at all. So there's definitely reasons why I just had to say, you know what, I can't do this.
Well, your whole worldviews were completely different.
Our entire worldviews, you're so right. It was so black and white, basically. That's how it felt at the time anyway. So
yeah. Well, Morgan, you want to share a little bit about yours?
Yeah, so just for the first question as an overview, I only dated once before my husband while I was in college, and we dated for about 9 months. Really felt like it was over after 6 months. But of course, you have to drag toxic relationships out as long as possible.
Of course.
And I would say about at 3 months, he started to change, but with toxic relationships and very narcissistic traits in him, it was very subtle. So of course I can see that in hindsight. But the change was subtle, and he wanted to push boundaries, but he made it seem like it was something that I wanted, or he was doing for me, like doing me a favor. And so slowly that just began a really vicious cycle that really messed with my mind. It was very twisty, and you just don't realize it in the moment. I knew something was wrong, but just not fully understanding to the degree of how he was making me feel, just shameful and awful about myself, He claimed to be a believer. I would seriously doubt that. He was involved in the ministry teams here on campus, and would help lead in chapel. And in all, word, he seemed to be a believer, but indeed he was not.
Yeah.
And after, pushing boundaries and not respecting me, not respecting my parents or my friends or my time, it just became more and more clear that there was no desire to honor the Lord, or he wouldn't be acting quite that way. So there was just a lot of manipulation, making everything my fault. He would ghost me for days, but then he would throw a fit if I got upset that he wasn't talking to me.
Yeah.
And so it just became very much all about him. So that's why it was pretty toxic in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll give a little bit about my story, but one of the reasons I think Morgan and I bonded so much after re-meeting in 2017 was because her and I had very similar stories. I went through an almost 7-year relationship. I think we got together when he was 13, I was 15. We were almost 2 years apart, but we dated through high school and into college. He seemed like a great guy. Definitely looking back, I can see a lot of things in the beginning that whole relationship started on bad reasons. But he was also the first guy I had ever dated, and now I'm getting married in July, so it's kind of crazy that it's been, this far coming in the sense of like everything that's happened. But yeah, we dated through middle school, through high school. When I graduated high school was around the time that things started getting really bad. I really wanted to go to college, but I wasn't sure. And I was kind of in this weird in-between time of not really knowing if I wanted to go to college or not. And he was not supportive at all. His excuse for me not going was, you're going to meet someone else, or you're going to forget that I exist. And it just was not good. And I finally talked it over with my mom, and my mom is one of my closest friends, and I go to her for advice quite a lot. But I said, hey, I really think God is calling me to go to college, and I feel like I'm ignoring him right now, and I think that may be why things are so stressful right now, and I really want to do this. And she said, okay, let's go for a college visit day, let's make this happen. And I told him, I said, yeah, I'm leaving. I'm going to go to college in the fall, and I was really excited. This was August of 2020, so it was already a hard year anyway with COVID and all the restrictions, but I truly believed that I was heading into the season of life that God wanted me to be in. And when I told him that I was planning on going to college, which really was only 20 minutes from my house, it wasn't like I was leaving the state, he said, why didn't you talk to me about this first? And that should have been a really big red flag, but he was not supportive. And then it got to the point where it was fake supportive, where he wanted to be at everything, but I don't feel like it was actually out of support for me, but out of the wish to control the situation and to control who I talked to. I actually had a really close guy friend, which we're still friends, but it's not close like it used to be, that I had met going into college, and we both came in the same year and we're graduating the same year. And we were in a few classes together, and we had gotten really close, and it was nothing. It was purely platonic. There was no hanging out by ourselves. We were always together in class or at a school function. It was purely honorable. And my ex started to see this guy as a threat and started to say, well, is he your on-campus boyfriend? Are you hiding something from me? Are you secretly cheating and all this stuff? And it really started to weigh on me, because not only is college stressful, but when you don't have a partner that is supportive, then it makes it so much harder. My mom can share a little bit about things that she had to see me go through, but I'm going to try to cut this a little short because it's a whole lot of baggage to unpack. But eventually I was in chapel one day and I said, Lord, I have not felt you in so long, because I'm choosing to be in this relationship that I know is not encouraging me to draw closer to you. And thankfully, all of the ladies at this table are a big reason why that guy is no longer in my life. But you guys all really helped me step out of that situation and see the truth of what was going on, and that all of the anxiety that I was experiencing, all the illness, all the sickness was coming from this constant battle with the Holy Spirit, of the Holy Spirit being like, you know better, just listen. Yes. I've got you. I've got you. I know what's best for you, and you're choosing to ignore me.
I think that's where you and I actually really do relate so well.
Yeah.
Because, well, all three of us, but knowing that you're involved in a relationship that is not pleasing to the Lord, it weighs on you.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times that's all you can think of, because you know that you're doing the wrong thing. And it always reminds me of the verse in the Bible that talks about, if it's better to cut your hand off than to sin. It's better to pluck your eyes out of, and it's like, oh, well, then I should just, cut off this relationship if it's causing me to sin or it's not pleasing to the Lord. And it's one of those things that you realize this is what the Lord tells you about. Yeah. This is why sin is so hard, because even if the relationship isn't in and of itself sinful, but you're not feeling drawn to the Lord, if the relationship is actively pulling you away from him, then it's not positive to you. It's not good for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's where all three of us can relate with each other on that, because that's what all of us experienced, having shame in our relationship and actively ignoring the Lord's calling to
and there were
not
so
just
many,
end it, but leave that situation for ourselves.
And there were so many times that I went to both of you honestly feeling so defeated, like in myself, but in my relationships, in my friendships. Like my relationship with my mom suffered, my relationship with both of you suffered, especially with Morgan, because Morgan was constantly pouring truth into my life, and I was just like, this is so uncomfortable. And I know
and I thought, she's gonna hate me forever. But I have to.
And I just knew, I knew what you were saying was truth. And especially knowing that you had walked through something similar, I could trust you. And especially during that time where that shame was really building up, I didn't go to church for 6 months. And it was because he didn't see the importance of going to church, but also I had so much shame wrapped around that.
The conviction.
Yes.
It's the conviction that gets you.
I mean, it's hard. It's hard to sit there in a pew on Sunday and say, Lord, I'm here to improve myself, when there's this area of your life that you're being like, I'm not quite ready to give this to you yet. Yep. And also, I don't think we realize how bad a situation is until we walk out of it.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hindsight really is 20/20. They say it really is. It's true.
No, and but anyway, to kind of wrap up my situation, but due to these ladies, I ended up really seeing how messed up it was. And I think in August of 2022, we were on really rocky ground, and I said, I can't do this anymore. And we kind of broke up, but we still kept talking.
As it always happens.
Ladies, don't do that. Because if it is someone who is narcissistic or has toxic tendencies and they know your buttons, they will suck you back in. And he did. He sucked me back in, and I allowed myself to be sucked back in because I can't blame him for everything. I can look back and say I did allow him to push those buttons, and I did allow him to suck me back into that relationship. And the Lord continued to keep convicting me. You ladies continued to keep pouring into my life, saying, this is not right. This is not right. You're not happy. You're not good. This is not pleasing to the Lord. It is not glorifying to God. You need to get out. And I think one of my biggest fears was what if I'm going to be alone forever? Because I want to be a wife and a mother, and my fear, and now it's crazy, now I'm getting married. But I was really struggling with that mentality of how do I let go without letting go of all my dreams. And the Lord just kept using you guys to teach me to trust him and to let go. And it really had to be a mental, you need to let go.
Right.
And when that point came, it came in November, and it came in November of 2022. And you guys said, block him on everything. Don't try to contact him. and you're going to just have to be strong. Text us if you're going through a bad day. We'll help you, but don't let him back in your life. And I did. And then I got to go to Israel in December of that year. It was a really rough trip because obviously you're going through a 7-year breakup. Like, it's kind of crazy. But at the same time, I had this freeing feeling while I was in Israel, just being able to grow and realize that I was where I needed to be spiritually. Like, I was in this place of being raw and vulnerable and saying, hey, Lord, I need your help so bad right now. Mm-hmm. And getting to be in the Holy Land during that time was a really amazing experience, a very hard experience, but a very amazing experience. And then in April of 2023, I met my now fiance, and 3 months in, we knew it was it, and now we're getting married this July. But it's just, crazy to sit back and look at all this.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, that's all the time we have for today, but thank you so much, ladies, for joining us and for being an encouragement to myself and to those listening. Join us next week as we continue part 2 of this series. Also, a big thank you to those listening to the podcast today. I hope you were encouraged and will join us next time as you fearlessly pursue your calling.